Hello and welcome to Kicking Tires. My name is Jimmy,
And I'm Justin.
and today this video is not, or podcast, I should say, is not sponsored by Mercedes, but it might feel like it because there's going to be a lot of Mercedes news. There's a little bit of Porsche news, but first I want to talk about Honda because Honda they released something kind of exciting, but I don't want to give our hopes up just yet. So Honda
Yeah.
released something new called TrailSport. So it's a new direction of advanced, rugged off-road design and capabilities of light trucks. That's what the blurb says. And what that means is they are lifting it, giving it body cladding, some all-terrain tires, and calling it some sort of kind of like the Wilderness Edition in Subaru, but of course this in Honda form. So that's basically what it is. It looks like they're starting off with the Passport because in their press release they have a photo of it, and it's definitely the back end of a Passport, which kind of makes sense because the Passport, out of all the vehicles they have, is the
Their
one that
most
should be.
active focus
Yeah, it's the
vehicle.
most
Yeah.
kind of capable. I mean, it already has an inch lift over the Pilot, but it comes standard with 20s. So, like, I'm hoping this would maybe, drop that down to an 18. Because the
Yeah.
brakes
Well,
behind it, they're tiny anyways. But yeah.
and everyone roasted Honda for the HPD Ridge line, I think,
Mm,
which just some bronze accents, a little bit extra cladding. Like to some people it might look cooler, but it's really just a styling package. It's got pretty matte tires. Like it's
the
not really given much capability. Whereas even with Subaru, with the Outback or the Forester Wilderness, there's actually some legitimate off-road capability there with skid plates, gearing,
Yeah.
and better tires. Um, so yeah, I don't. The thing I see with this is Honda's direction is we should be focusing on electrification, really, not light trucks. Um,
I mean,
I
I
don't
think
know if
there's
that's
a.
what their marketing is going towards, trying to compete with TRD, but it's like, you
I,
know,
I don't think they're trying to compete with TRD in this. Like some might think it would, but I don't think it's a direct competitor.
not
I
the
th-
real TRD, not the TRD Pros, but like the soft roader TRDs, right? We have what
mm,
the RAV4's
like the
got a
RAV4
TRD. Yeah. Um,
and the Sienna Wilderness or whatever one that was called.
yeah, Sienna, something. Um, and so they're doing that kind of soft roading stuff with Toyota. But the difference is Toyota's got a really strong platform, and
Mhm.
with their hybrid technology, it's the cars are a lot more competitive. Whereas Honda, it's like you're just trying to spice up an otherwise really mediocre car. I think in a lot of cases, I always like the Ridgeline, but there's just more that you could do to give it some appeal. I think.
Mhm. When's the last time you saw a Honda Passport?
Oh, I never see them. I still see some pilots. I still see some pilots. I don't
Pilots
see many.
are
Yeah,
definitely more common, but
yeah.
I don't see passports.
It's a weird segment, and they keep targeting like weird stuff that no one's really competing against. And that doesn't mean that you get a free. I got that whole market all to myself. It's that there isn't much of a market there to begin with. Um, I think it's the wrong approach. I don't. Yeah, I don't know. We'll see. We'll start seeing some of these trail sport models roll out. But I don't have the highest expectations from Honda.
No, I think it'll just be a maybe a just a different trim. I think it'll be a little bit cooler. Maybe it'll take some of the people away from the wilderness package that Subaru has, but Subaru also has a much bigger market space, right? When it
Mhm.
comes to this kind of off-road type vehicle. No one's really thinking, if I want to go off-road, I'm going to hit up Honda for a passport.
Yeah,
It's
because it
going,
goes beyond just what the car is capable of. There's a
yeah.
reason why everyone takes a Tacoma, 4Runner, Jeep, or Subaru, because there's a huge aftermarket for it. There's a lot of support
Yeah.
from, if you want to make that an overland rig, how big of a tire. There's all this information is out there, and it's not going to be for Honda. Like it's you can try to get this started, but you're a little bit late to the game.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. But let's move on from that. Let's talk about Porsche, because this one's
This is someone
exciting.
who's not late to the game.
Definitely not. So Porsche released their Mission R. The Mission R is a concept. What they want to do is they want to bring essentially electrification to racing. And this is like the size of the Cayman. And we can kind of think this as like the next gen E Cayman R, kind of, because the way that it's produced, the way that it's sized, it's very Cayman-esque, and people are loving this thing. It's
It's so
stupendously fast.
wild. I
Yeah,
just love the whole space frame exoskeleton kind of architecture, and one of the things that they do really well is that this looks like a Taycan, right? We have a
yeah,
lot of styling elements and styling from Porsche race cars, from their street cars. This is branding done right.
yeah,
I always talk about Hyundai, how they just go a different direction every time.
yeah,
This is really wild in terms of Porsche. Like, look at that carbon fiber frame, the steering. It's everything is wild, but it's kind of recognizable as a Porsche. Um,
yeah, absolutely. The headlights all the way to the taillights, it has the Taycan look on it. It it's
yeah,
absolutely stunning the way that it looks. But it's not just about looks. It has 1,073 horsepower in qualifying mode, or 671 horsepower when in race mode. It is dual motors, front and rear, 0 to 62 in about 2.5 seconds, with top speed about 186 miles per hour.
hmm,
It's crazy. There's a 900-volt battery system on here, so that it can charge between 5 to 80% in about 15 minutes. So, I mean, no one's going to be racing this endurance style with, actual 15 minutes of charge time. If
one
anything,
of
it's going to be,
24 hours of Le Mans.
if anything, it's,
Actually, come to think of it, that would be kind of interesting, right? So not only are we talking about the manufacturer, the performance of the vehicle, we're also talking about the engineering and the charging behind it. Like if you were to run a 24-hour race with other electric race cars, you can give yourself a huge advantage by having the quickest charging battery or the longest lasting battery. And like that in itself is kind of the spirit of competition. So, even though this battery can only supply 45 minutes of
yeah.
racing.
So they estimate between 30 to 45 minutes of race time.
Mhm.
It's kind of short.
Yeah, like there will be like kind of 15-minute intermissions with your race, your say 6-hour endurance race, but in the end, whoever builds the best car is going to win. Um,
I, I
mhm,
I just can't get over how beautiful the carbon fiber work is. Um, in a way, it reminds me of Singer, because the
mhm.
Singer has that kind of X on the door, and this is exactly the same, except it's just part of the cage. It's so like beautiful.
Yeah, and then I think as far as lap times go, it's up there with the GT3R. I think they said.
Yeah.
So
So
yeah,
estimated times are both basically the same as the 911 GT3R. So it is a full-on race car. They're not holding anything back on this. But looking at this, it gets me excited about the next Cayman, because I think it's not going to be anything close to this, obviously, but like 60% of this, I think that would be really
uh,
cool already.
I would disagree, knowing how Porsche's design language has been. The
Oh, sorry,
911.
not like looks. Looks, I think, would be pretty close to this. I'm talking about like the technology and how the carbon is on the inside, everything. like 60% of
I
what it looks
I
like.
highly doubt it because the Cayman complex is the Cayman complex, right? The 991, they're only the 992 generation. Um, we're already seeing all the models trickle in. We see the GT3 and stuff, and they're not going that wild with it. So I don't see them going, full tilt with the Cayman. Even though the Cayman, for a lot of us, is the one that we want, they will never allow it. And they always have to nerf the Cayman somehow. And so it will be what it is. I don't think it will be that groundbreaking, the Cayman. It will never be one step ahead of the 911.
Yeah, it's kind of sad, but I'm just thinking like on the outer shell, like if it can look a little bit like that, probably the bottom half below that belt
Yeah.
line, it's not going to be anything close. But I think
Yeah.
above, I
I
can
think it
see
will
it.
just be a whole separate series, right? Like it will be like, how they had the 924, the 911, and then the 928. How it will just be like that other model, some electric race car, supercar thing. Not that the Taycan is any slouch, but something more dedicated to being a sports car.
Yeah. No, I hear you. It's just so beautiful. I really love this Mission
Yeah.
R.
Yeah, they knocked it out of the park with the design.
Definitely. Okay, let's move on to Mercedes because there's I had to refresh the page.
4 new cars to talk about this week.
There's a lot of Mercedes cars. Let's talk about the first one here, which is the EQE. So Mercedes, of course, they have like their A class, B class, C class, E class, and S class as their regular sedans, and then they have their SUVs. But the EQ lineup is their brand new, well, not so much brand new because they had the EQC as well as the EQA in other markets. But the EQE is like, think E class except electrified. That's what the EQE is. But looks wise, I'm sorry, but I can't see a difference between this and the EQS.
The
Just based on looks
grille and
alone.
headlight design is slightly different, but the bumper and the shape is the same, and that's kind of unfortunate with any electric vehicle. It's always going to be the case. But whereas the EQS has kind of a triangular, think like a trapezoid kind of shape with the grille and the headlights. This one is a bit more like a T shape, but it's so similar. They
Yeah,
can't do that much with the styling.
it's very, very similar in terms of the way it looks. But of course, most electric cars are this, this simple egg shape because it is the most efficient at cutting through the air. And if you're looking at an electric car, that's one of the biggest things, right? Something that's different between this and the EQS is the EQS is actually a hatchback, whereas the EQE is a sedan because there's actually a trunk on this rather than a hatch. So I would kind of think that there's less in terms of flexibility in a cargo space, but maybe quieter because a hatch design generally lets in more sound than the regular trunk design. Of course, Mercedes engineers can do something completely different, and who knows. But let's talk about power. So the EQE, the base model here, it's going to be the EQE 350. And that's going to be one electric motor on the rear axle, making 288 horsepower. There is going to be an all-wheel drive model that's going to be coming down the line, estimating about 400 horsepower, and probably a Mercedes AMG EQE following that. But, like, I understand the EQS, get your flagship out first. This is just one step below that. But I don't know, there's just nothing about it that says, oh, this is some amazing vehicle to me.
Yeah, the E-Class has always been like that to me. My neighbor just picked one up about 2 weeks ago, an E-Coupe of all cars. And it's like, it is a little bit nicer than the C-Class, but it doesn't, if I don't see the need to spend that kind of money to go up to an E class. Like the E never made the C. Obviously, it fits the needs of most people. The E is like if you find the C too small, but then if you get the coupe, then it's like not really.
Yeah.
Um, and so the coupe really doesn't make much sense. And I mean, yeah, Mercedes has, I guess, the last 6 years, I would say the Mercedes design language is so repetitive. I don't want to say it's bad or boring or anything, but it's just more of the same. And yeah, from a distance, this thing proportionally and as far as like the style, whatever features you want to look at is a little bit too similar to the EQS. And it's just, I don't know, it's just not exciting.
Yeah, I think it's kind of like a disservice to the EQS because like the EQS is going to be expensive because it's the S class. You got this that's gives you a lot of what you can get on the EQS, like the optional hyper screen that's on the inside, where basically the entire dash is a screen, cluster, infotainment, and another one in front of the passenger side, and that's one giant screen that connects. And that's like one of the biggest features in the EQS when they launched it. And this is, the same thing that's available. So it's like, other than having that prestige, like, yes, it's an EQS and
Yeah.
a little bit bigger. Is there a point to the EQS that, what I
Yeah,
mean?
it is one of those, like, you buy it for the status of having the S model.
Yeah.
Oh, Alex is back. Um, yeah, because nowadays there's just not that much you can push in terms of feature content with luxury vehicles. The EQS, I was watching some reviews and they're like, okay, the EQS really pushes it to the next level because the S class is, there's, you can't ignore that there's an internal combustion engine in it,
Mhm.
and it just makes it that much more luxurious. But how is the EQS going to differentiate from the EQE? That, yeah, I think you're right. There's just not that much appeal there either, because
Yeah.
there's really not that much you can do. It's bigger, maybe given more power, but like bigger batteries, stuff like that. But it's just not that interesting. I mean, even Tesla kind of has this issue, right? The Model 3 and the
Model
S,
S.
and then the Model Y and the X is kind of, it's kind of the same. Where the Model Y is really a pretty solid vehicle. Like, it's, you may not be able to get it with that third row seat, but it's such a compromise in the X anyways,
Yeah.
and arguably it's a better looking car. So
Yeah.
yeah,
And up until the recent update, the interior of the 3 and the Y was significantly better than the S
yeah, it's
and
just
the X.
newer stuff and better built too.
Yeah.
Like, the fit and finish on the newer stuff is better than the old stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. So the EQE here, it's going to have a battery capacity of about 90 kilowatt hours, which means it's about 410 miles on a WLTP range, which means about 350 EPA rated. So roughly about 300 to 350 miles,
Mm.
about 550 or so odd kilometers, which I think in terms of range, it's totally fine. So it should give you sufficient range out of that. And it does have the fast charge that the EQS has. So you're still able to charge it relatively quickly as long as the charger supplies that kind of power.
Mm.
It also has the optional rear steering, which when I was watching the EQS reviews, that's really cool. Up to 10 degrees, which is quite a bit
Oh,
for rear wheel steering. So
yeah.
parking maneuvers and just maneuvering,
Right.
it's going to be quite good because the wheelbase on it is relatively long. It's only like 3.5 inch shorter than the EQS. So it's still relatively long. Hey, Alex, it's going to be relatively long wheelbase itself. But yeah, I think that's about it for the EQE. Anything else you want to add before we move on to another EQ family?
No, let's move it along.
Yeah, so the next
This
one here
one,
is the EQB, which is the GLB. So like the second biggest second smallest SUV that Mercedes makes. And they just EQ-fied it, in lack of better words, an
yeah,
electric version of it.
I really like the front end treatment of this. I think it's a better look than the regular GLB, which the headlights are a little bit low down and just gives it awkward proportions. The
Mhm.
EQ style front end has brought it up a little bit, just gives it a smarter look overall.
Yeah, I don't mind the looks at all. Of course, in other markets, the EQA is already for sale and you can get that. And the EQA, like the GLA versus GLB, and I was recently in those. The GLA, it's just quite a bit smaller than the GLB, and the GLB is just so much more practical with like smallest compromises in terms of looks, and of course, there's a little bit more money. But the GLB or the EQB, it definitely makes a lot more sense than the GLA. Um, and I think the back end on this, it looks amazing
Oh
compared to the
yeah,
regular GLB.
yeah,
Um,
that bar
I
tail light. Yeah,
as I said before, I'm a sucker for taillights that stretches the entire width of the vehicle, and they give me this in
there's,
in
there's
the
only
EQB
one
here.
slight issue I have with it is the logo placement on the back. I think is a little bit awkward. It's
The
like not
EQ or the
really
Mercedes logo.
on the EQB, the Mercedes logo.
So how it's like slightly lower.
It's a little bit low.
I think it should have been above the tail light.
Yeah, either above or just move everything. Well, they couldn't move the whole thing up because the C pillar or the D pillar is still fundamentally GLB.
Mm.
But yeah, no, it's a good look regardless. I'm just nitpicking there.
It's definitely a good looking vehicle. If we look at the inside of the EQB, it looks like there are some copper accents on the vents, which is really cool.
Yeah, and they've
You
done
get
that on the outside too with the wheels, eh?
yeah,
On some models.
I'm sure it's going to be like an optional extra kind of thing. But I am a big fan of copper accents on cars. I think it's like one of those up and coming things because chrome is quite played out, and everyone hates like blacked out bits. Copper, I think copper looks good. You know, kind of punk,
Steampunk.
steampunk. That's what I was thinking. Yes, kind of
Yeah,
look to
I don't know. I don't know. 20 years down the road, if I will look
it.
at that like this is really weird. Why is it copper?
Why is it?
Uh, in this moment of time, it looks good. Um,
It's because of all the copper that's in the electric motor. So they have to
uh,
represent that on the outside. See?
yeah, really grasping at straws. Uh,
um, I think I think if you're gonna buy an electric Mercedes, like this one is probably the most important one for Mercedes overall, EQB.
and
Not
no
the
real competitors, right? Like, I mean, you
well,
could look at a Model Y as a competitor,
you
kind of, but like
Model Y
this is a
is quite
nicer
a bit
car.
bigger, and I'm
Yeah,
certain it's gonna be more expensive than this as well. I feel like the EQB, like the only real competitor, is a non-premium brand, like a Kona would be, because then it's
yeah,
about that
or
same size.
ID4.
Yeah,
But I
exactly.
think price point wise, this is going to be up there. This is probably going to be like 60 plus.
Audi actually is making an electric car based off the ID4.
Hmm.
e-tron 5, I can't remember what it's called right now, but I think it might be a little bit bigger. I think it might be more EQC sized than EQB sized
Hmm.
because it's based off the ID4. And as we know, the ID4 is actually quite a large vehicle.
Yeah, they have that e-tron S Sportback, or it's kind of like a similar to like a A5 Sportback kind of size. But I think this could be ID. No, the wheelbase looks a little bit longer. Maybe
It's a
it's a different one.
Q4 e-tron, I think it's called. That's what it
Q4.
is.
Okay, yeah, the
Yeah,
Q4. I've seen that one. Oh, is that based on the ID4? Eh?
it is. It's based on the ID4.
Oh, yeah, no, it's pretty nice.
Yeah. And I mean, Audi desperately needs something better.
Yeah, the Audi
Um,
has a much sportier, sleeker look than the Mercedes. The Mercedes is a little bit softer
yeah.
design. The Audi is very aggressive.
Yeah. Well, the EQB is still based on the GLB, so it's still a gasoline vehicle turned electric, right? We gotta,
Mhm.
still think of that. It's not a full-on electric vehicle like the
Yeah,
ID4, like the Q4, Leaf, Teslas, and all that. This is a turn vehicle, which means that there's going to be compromises, and probably the biggest one is the range because it's estimated to have 260 miles, the WLTP cycle, which means maybe about 200 miles or so, which should be sufficient for most people, especially if you live around towns. Because a lot of people when they're buying electric, they're like, oh, this doesn't have my 500-kilometer range. It doesn't have my 300-mile range. I can't buy this car. And my question is, how often are you driving 300 some odd miles in a single
yeah,
span?
yeah.
I don't know about you, but last time I went on a road trip that needed that kind of range was like 3-4 years ago now. Just you know, who goes on vacation that often that you need to drive? Take a plane.
I
Like
mean, it's easy to say that right now with the whole panoramic and all that.
yeah, things are a little different. But the EQB is going to have two different models. There's going to be the EQB 300 and a 350, 225 horsepower and 288. So, I mean, almost 300 horsepower isn't bad. And even the base EQB 300 will reach about 100 kilometers per hour in about 8 seconds or so. So, more than sufficient, I think, for this type of little SUV. Oh, and they're all wheel drive, dual motor, front and rear.
Hmm.
Moving on, another Mercedes EQ vehicle. This is the Mercedes AMG EQS 53 4MATIC Plus. So this is Mercedes and AMG's first fully electric vehicle. So like the first electric vehicle with an AMG plaque on the rear end of it. And it's a 53, which tells me that later on there's probably going to be a 63. That kind of makes sense. But it is a 4MATIC Plus. It doesn't tell me exactly if it's going to have like a rearward bias kind of drift mode or anything like that. Because generally a 4MATIC
Four
Plus
wheel
system.
steering is wild. I'm looking at the press photos for this thing, and the four wheel steering is really,
Yeah,
really aggressive.
I think like I think it's the same 10 degrees on the rear. It's quite aggressive.
Yeah.
It's a I mean, it looks basically the same as the regular EQS, except the grille. I mean, it's still no grille. Instead of having like Mercedes logos behind it, it's the Panamericana. So it's like the silver slats or chrome slats.
Vertical.
It just I don't know. To me, it doesn't look great. I don't think it fits the car that well. But that's just me. I'm not going to be the one that's going to be buying this car anyway, so it doesn't matter what I
Yeah.
think.
I mean, there's really not that much differentiating this and the regular one styling wise, I would think, because the vent on the bumper, like that's all there already. The little lip spoiler. They don't go crazy with the aero because ultimately, I guess they're just trying to preserve range and reduce drag.
Oops.
So we're not seeing. I don't really know why this is an AMG. It's got carbon ceramic brakes in the press photos, but it looks a little bit lower.
Something that's kind of weird. Like I know you're saying the rear wheel steering. I'm looking at the press photos because of how far that turns. It almost looks broken. Like
Yeah, it looks broken.
it's that
A lot
far
of
up.
code.
It's quite aggressive. I was taking a look actually at like the regular EQS because I wanted to compare like the front bumper for a regular EQS and this AMG version. There isn't that big of a difference. There really isn't. The front bumpers on AMG products generally has like the scoops and everything, and regular EQS already has that. Yeah, the regular EQS already has that. And then I'll look at the rear end. Maybe there's a little diffuser on the bottom. And once again, the regular EQS already has that. So like visually, like, I mean, of course, not having a car side by side, the only thing I can really see is that grille. That's a difference.
The grille, the color choices, the wheel choices. That's probably about it.
Yeah. It definitely isn't much.
And then it's got the black window trim, which I don't know if that is available on the regular
blacked out rather than chrome. Yeah
the window trim, actually it is. Okay. No big difference there. What I found kind of interesting was they're like, oh, the AMG model, this is going to be built in a Felterbach, and it's like because the whole point before was the handmade engines, right? But now you're building a car in your AMG factory for what exactly? Like it gets AMG, suspension tuning, sound tuning as well.
Yes.
We don't know. Might need to hear what that sounds like.
Jetsons.
Yeah. I would love that. Like if you could just choose like a Jetsons.
Jetson sound. Just have it play on the interior speakers according to throttle modulation. Like, why not? I think that would be really cool. Like, other than the AMG badge on the back, suspension tuning and sound tuning, there is a little bit more power. 133 horsepower over the regular EQS 580. So 649 horsepower and 700 pound-feet of torque. And you can get the AMG Dynamics Plus package, and that's 751 horsepower and about 750 pound-feet of torque. 0 to 63.4 seconds. That's pretty quick. I mean, it's not Plaid Model S, 2 seconds, 0 to 60 kind of quick, but I still think this is going to be quite respectable.
We'll have to wait for the EQGT to really see a Plaid competitor for Mercedes.
Yeah, and I think how EQS is positioned, it's like this is more luxury than just going fast, whereas Tesla is kind of the mix in the middle, I would say.
Yeah. I feel like they always have to just keep one-upping themselves, so they add models like this that are not fundamentally all that different, but it just gives you something to, if your neighbor got the regular one, you got to get this one too.
to one up, yeah.
In your gated community, I've got the sexy version.
Well, I mean, if I'm really gonna one up you, I'm gonna buy this, the EQG. The EQG is basically the G-Wagon, except it has a big old battery and electric motor rather than the 4-liter twin-turbo V8 that it normally has. This thing is still a full body on frame. It's just a G-Wagon. Dump the motor out, put electric motors in, put a battery in, change up the front grille, and take out the spare tire and put in an AirPods case. It's basically what it looks like. But that's, I mean,
it's a really cool roof rack too. Oh, never mind. I saw the roof rack says G on the roof, which I think is a little bit tacky. But well, I was like, it looks like a Princey rack. Like it's a really low profile and looks really sturdy.
No, it's like a G in the middle. How else are you going to tell people, that might be in their helicopter that you're driving the electric G-Wagon?
Sadly, with the even with the AirPods case, they haven't really done the backup camera any justice. Which the G-Wagon still doesn't look like it has the right backup camera, which is what we see on the Bronco, the Wrangler, and even the FJ Cruiser in its final years had the spare tire backup camera, which
I think it's because
really the way to go.
I think it's because it's offset as well, so I don't think it's going to work that well. The AirPods case that we're referring to is in place of the spare tire. It's a smaller compartment. Mercedes is basically saying that this is where you can keep your charge cables, so you don't have to put them inside. So a lot of vehicles have like a front you can put your cables into. Well, this has a backpack for you to put your electric cables into. That's that's really what it's for. The wheels, what do you think? They're monoblock.
They're a lot better. These are awesome, actually. I think
You like those?
it's a lot cleaner, and I like what they've done with the lug nuts, which is hide it in that painted black circle. I think it matches the aesthetic of the car because they're not too low profile.
Yeah.
If they were a little bit smaller, I think they would be better. To give it a meatier look with the tire, but it looks electric enough. It looks beefy enough, which that's kind of all I can ask for.
Yeah. There's absolutely no information on this. This is a concept, so there's no like range or anything like that. But I don't expect it to have the biggest or the longest range, just because. I mean, it is literally a box. It's going to be really heavy.
Brick going through the air.
It's not an egg shape. It's not going to go well. But I think it's cool. Like, Mercedes is definitely electrifying everything that they have.
Well, and this is one of their most beloved models. And with internal combustion engines going away, we're going to see an electric G-Wagon sooner or later.
Absolutely. And like a actual electric G-Wagon, like a better one, not one that's been electrified. I think that's going to be in the future. But this is also in the future, the Mercedes Maybach EQS. So the biggest problem with this is the name itself, EQS. EQS also stands for their sedan. There's no distinction between the EQS sedan and this EQS, which is an SUV.
There's no GL, the EQGL, because the Galanda, which this is just an EQS, so it's very confusing. It's the EQS SUV, I think they call it.
Yeah. So Mercedes Maybach EQS SUV. This is basically a full Maybach vehicle, kind of like the EQS AMG was the first AMG. This is the first Maybach or Maybach electric vehicle that's going to be out there. I mean, this is going to be a concept at the moment, but we're pretty sure that sooner or later Mercedes is going to come up with this, because it's definitely the next step here.
Well, and they did say at the end of the press release that this is going to be a platform not just for the Maybach, but also for other electric SUVs going forward. So the Maybach is what they're debuting this platform on, but obviously, like other Maybach products, it is going to be a shared platform with other more pedestrian models that don't cost $500,000.
I'm sure this is going to be, you know what, $500,000. I think it sounds about right for this, because the regular GLS Maybach is like 300 something. I think 400 something. It's about there.
Does it look the part? That is my question to you.
The color combo.
It's got to park up next to the Bentayga. It's got to park next to the Cullinan.
So to me, I really like the color combo, the red and black. It's perfect for Maybach. Like I saw that on the regular Maybach 57 and 62. Like I think that's perfect. Because it's an electric car, it doesn't need a front grille, but they need to put that Maybach front grille in the front. The front reminds me of the Lincoln MKT. Yeah, that one. The one that basically looks like a train on the front. That's what it reminds me of. So I don't think it's the most attractive front end, but the details are there. Like the front headlight, there's little Maybach little symbols within the headlight. That headlight, like, if you get into an accident, that's a $3,000 headlight right there.
Oh, way more than that, yeah.
Per side and whatnot. Like it's going to be expensive. I think, being a 4-passenger SUV like the GLS, it's going to be, I think it's enough to set it apart from the rest, but I don't think, this sitting there, if it's next to the Bentayga or the Cullinan, I still
Doesn't
think
look that expensive. And you know what it looks like is the Lancia Delta and the Ypsilon, which are not attractive cars. But I think, granted, this one is a better looking car. It is grand enough to pull off that big grill, but the grill I feel like could be flashier, even being a Maybach.
Do you want Maybach badges in it, like inlaid inside?
Yeah, it's kind of weird. They went with the traditional Mercedes hood ornament when you could have gone with the Maybach hood ornament.
Well, all the Maybach now is because it's Mercedes Maybach. They still go with the Mercedes emblem on it, but they put Maybach just below that. So on the front leading edge, it says Maybach, and on the D pillar, it has a Maybach badge as well. But the interior, this interior is absolutely beautiful.
You want to spend some time in it. Like you look at the fabric and it just looks so luxurious. It's like walking into like a high-end retail showroom.
Yeah.
Is what I think when I see this. Gold accents, pinstriping, super nice.
Yeah, it's definitely a beautiful interior. There's a lot of like different materials that's inside, but it's still so simple and clean. Thanks to that like giant screen that you got on the front. Like it's exceptional.
It has a yoke for a steering wheel.
You know what?
But you're not driving this car.
I don't think so. I think, with this, I'm sure they're going to have some sort of autonomous type driving with it. So the yoke wouldn't really matter. I think it's absolutely beautiful. But kind of like the current GLS Maybach, I think I only saw one ever on the road. It's going to be super exclusive. It's going to be one of those that, you'll never see. And when you see that one, you're going to just like break your neck trying to see it.
Oh, yeah. I do love what they've done. And it's very futuristic as well, which I think is cool. I'm looking at their concept drawing, and that thing looks so cool.
Yeah, the concept definitely looks better.
With the stance and just like a hot rod roofline, it does look a lot cooler. And that is the big boy. You pull up in that, it does have presence.
I mean,
the real car, unfortunately, smoothed out reality kicked in. It has to be, everyone needs to buy it.
Yeah, something that they actually have to develop and something that can actually carry people. Because in the concept drawing with that kind of chopped roof look, you're not going to have. It does look like a Hot Wheel, especially with those super deep looking wheels. But it's definitely not going to be comfortable for people inside in terms of like this overall room.
Speaking of the wheels on the production, semi-production concept. So the one that they've actually built. So again, we're going with a really big, flat, big shield, garbage can lid, however you want to call it, wheel. This is still better than those AMG monoblocks, in my opinion. The car can pull it off. Now, I noticed something odd, which is the tire choice. In one of the photos, I think that one that you have queued up, it has really aggressive looking all-terrain, almost look like a Toyo Proxys. Like it doesn't look like a high-end luxury tire, and that seems weird to me. But I think they might have actually mounted that up because it was the only 23-inch or 24-inch tire available, and it just looks a little bit odd if you zoom in on the tire tread, because it doesn't look like it belongs on a luxury, $500,000 car. It looks like what you would put on a Honda TrailSport vehicle. Yeah, if you can get it to load.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like it wants to load for whatever reason. Oh, there it is. That's not the image.
Some pictures have a normal tire.
Oh, I can see it on this one.
Yeah, it's a really aggressive, like all-terrain looking tire, which doesn't make sense for a car that you're trying to make as quiet as possible.
I just noticed the carpet looks like shag pile type carpet. It looks super soft. It's one of those cars that you look at the inside, you're like, oh, I think I ought to take my shoes off before I get in there.
Yeah, you know when you go to like a high-end store and they have like really soft carpet, you're like, should I really be walking on this?
Where's the
And
booties?
obviously they pay people to keep it clean and soft, but it's just like it's a little bit too nice. Yeah, just slap in some WeatherTechs and I don't really care, but it is super nice.
I can definitely see the tread on it. Yeah, it definitely looks weird.
Yeah, it doesn't match the aesthetic of the car. It is, and it's got fixed running boards, which I thought was kind of interesting because kind of in this price range, you would always see deployable running boards.
Ones, yeah.
Yeah, but I think fixed one looks fine too.
The problem with a lot of deployable ones is like, because they hide up under the body, it doesn't give the vehicle like skirts. So it doesn't look as nice when they're like undeployed. It gives you more ground clearance, but I don't really think that's needed here. And these fixed ones, it kind of gives you like this ledge, kind of like a little bit more old school look to it.
It's a design accent, right? Rather than not seeing it, it's part of the design of this car.
I think it's cleaner overall with it. I like it. But that brings us to the last part here, which is the Ford Bronco Sport review. Posted this on Monday. Of course, the Bronco Sport is the baby Bronco. So it's based on the Ford Escape, but I don't know. I still think it's a really good vehicle overall.
I think it's a better vehicle, frankly,
than
the Escape.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think so as well. The Escape, there's nothing wrong with the Escape. You can get the Escape in a hybrid and plug-in hybrid. I think that's the best parts about it. But if you're going to get a gasoline version, you're probably not too concerned about fuel economy. Just get the Bronco Sport. You get more practicality out of it. It looks way cooler. When I was filming this, 4 people came up to me and asked me about it. Hey, is that the new Bronco Sport? Like, is that the new Bronco? Like, actually had people coming up to me and asking if it was a Bronco.
It's such a good looking car. Like, the design is so important. And this is probably the best looking soft roader available right now. This is what Jeep should have done rather than making these oddball
the Cherokee,
the Cherokees, the Compass, like they all look a little bit goofy, whereas this is the Bronco but shrunken down. They could have made a Wrangler but shrunken down, but then it ends up looking like that first generation Patriot. Like it. Yeah, they could have put more effort in, but now Bronco is here to stay.
Well, the Cherokee is due for a refresh. The current one's been out for quite a while, and they're definitely due for a refresh. I think they should go with something like this direction, because like even the Cherokee Trailhawk that they have, like it's very capable vehicle, but it's
more capable than the Bronco apparently.
From some of the reviews I've seen, absolutely. But like to me, I mean, if I park this next to one,
this just charms your socks off. Like
the Cherokee is like the current one's better than the before facelift, because before the facelift it was very Fiat kind of front end, and I wasn't a big fan of it. But the current one is better, but not by a whole lot. But this just looks the part. Like it's super rugged in terms of just the way it is, and there's a lot of clever bits and pieces on the inside. Like they thought of a lot of stuff. Like there's no powered tailgate, because you wouldn't want a powered tailgate if you're going to be camping and stuff. You want
and it's pretty impressive because they had to stick with the hard points of the Escape, but they've gone and completely redeveloped this car for that soft roader market, which there's a lot of appeal to this, a lot more than the Escape in my opinion.
I think so as well. The only thing that was kind of sad and not the biggest thing that I liked about it was like the engine performance. Sorry, like the fuel consumption, I should really say. The engine is good. It's the it's a 2 liter. Sorry, it's a 2 liter turbo for 250 horsepower, if I recall correctly. So power wise, it comes on nice and strong because it has plenty of torque. I think it's like 277 pound-feet. So like torque was good, but it wasn't great in the city. I think it's about 21 miles per gallon in the city, 11 liters or 13 liters for 100 kilometers. But that's what's rated and what you get. Like when I had it, I was driving around and I got about 15 liters for 100 kilometers. It wasn't great. So like, I kind of wish there was a hybrid variant because of that. It would have made it just a little bit easier to live with.
Power, I guess aside from Jeep, the other crossovers in this class don't have anywhere near that level of power.
No.
So, yeah.
I mean, the CX-5 has more torque, but...
Right, the CX-5 turbo, but
it's not going to compete against this when you're talking about actually going off-road. This can. CX-5, you're not going to. And this is like...
The box on wheels is such a practical form factor.
And because they raised the roof on the rear end, there's actually more space in the back. So like you can fit a like 6 foot something tall person in the back seat and they'll still have room. You can fit bikes inside the cabin and there's room. Like, you're not going to fit.
Do you remember when Ford tried this many years ago
with the Escape?
And they completely flopped.
Yeah.
With the Freelander.
Freelander.
The Land Rover.
Oh my god.
Oh, I know what you mean.
First generation Freelander, absolutely disgusting, but it was kind of like that off-road mini cute Ute that just really flopped.
And no better way to put it.
It's got the Ford DNA, but no reviewers really talked about that car.
Yeah,
but I think it's good to mention that this is a much better attempt from Ford Motor Company,
absolutely,
making a semi off-road capable small crossover.
Yeah, the GOAT modes were pretty good as well. There's no real good off-roading spots. Like when I had this, I asked you, and I wanted to go out, and I couldn't find a spot that was close by, and you couldn't do a full day on the trail. But
yeah, you'd have to go at least like 2 hours out.
Yeah, so I got a chance to play around a little bit in Richmond at Triangle. There was an area that it was just in the off-road, kind of like the sandy portion, going back to the regular road part. And because of the incline that was there, I was able to test the all-wheel drive system. It was actually super responsive. Like if I had it locked, there was minimal slip, which is exactly what you want if it's locked. I was thinking because it's the clutch pack, it wouldn't actually fully lock, but it did. I was actually kind of surprised about that. And even in normal mode, it was able to climb with minimal slip. There was a little bit, but as soon as it starts slipping, it'll reset power the other way. So the system itself is quite smart in trying to get you over whatever obstacle that you need.
Yeah, there has to be slip to at least initiate the computer to respond to that. So it is pretty normal. But what tires were on your press car?
I don't recall. Let's see if I have. They're Falcons, Wild Peaks ATs.
Oh, nice.
235, 65, 16.
Oh, nice. That is one size down from what I have on the RAV4.
Yeah, your RAV4 is like oversized.
29. That's like a 29. Yeah, like a 29-inch tire. So a lot bigger than the Forester Wilderness.
Yeah. This is going to be much more.
Interior-wise, a lot smaller.
It feels smaller. I don't know if it fully is or not. But still like 8.8 inches ground clearance and almost 24 inches of water fording. So like, it's actually decently impressive. This is the part of the video that I go over that kind of side lip. So driving it normally, you can see a little slip on the front wheel. I lifted the front left or front right, but like it got over it with literally no problems. But of course, this is much less aggressive what I put it through than what it can do, because there has been Bronco Sport owners that's taken this vehicle to Moab, and like it's it's a CUV, really. That's what it is. But they were able to go up to Moab with it, and they were actually having quite a bit of fun, with the help of some others when it, times got a little tough. But I saw one climb. Is it Dragon's Back, I think it's called? That really treacherous climb that everyone says is like the hardest thing, because it's like a V. Yeah, I can't remember exactly what it's called. Oh my
gosh, someone took a Bronco Sport there?
Yeah, it got up with no problems.
That's insane. I mean, it's lightweight, it's narrow, and the overhangs are relatively short, but the tires, I guess they must have some kind of upsized tires.
I don't recall. I can check on that video later, but like I just don't recall. But I was amazed that it climbed up. I was like, okay, this isn't just an Escape that has a bit of dress up and whatnot. This is actually,
or maybe the Escape is just that capable and no one ever tried.
All right, time for me to book an Escape. Let's give it a shot. No, I think the all-wheel drive system, the two are quite different, because this one, it has the rear diff with the twin clutches on the rear, whereas even actually the lower end models don't have that. And the lower end models is the same rear diff as the Escape, so it's only a single clutch back to activate the rear end. The one that I got, because it's the Badlands, you get that essentially a locking rear diff. Essentially.
And what's the as tested price on that one?
As tested, 48.
Ooh.
Yeah, it's a little expensive. 48.
It's a little expensive, but you are getting a pretty powerful. That's Focus ST motor.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And pretty cool engineering behind it with that differential. So you pay to play. I think it will be one of those future classics, though.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Here's me going over some sand, because that's the only thing I could find. Obviously,
Very softly. We took our friend's E class over.
So yeah, like it definitely didn't have problems doing that. But I went back to that same spot. You can kind of see, like when it goes over, when it lifts that tire, a little bit of slip.
Wow.
Little bit of slip, right? But once it caught that, it sent power to the other side and just kept on going. Like I'm super impressed by it. My wife really loved it. She likes the styling of it. It fits kids in there. It fits stroller in there. Like it's a really good family vehicle for 3, maybe 4. Really, I don't have a lot of complaints, other than I wish it had a more efficient powertrain, a hybrid powertrain or plug-in hybrid, so that way it just competes a little bit better with the RAV4. But then, I mean, I know there's a lot of RAV4 owners right now that's like lifting it, and actually they're pretty capable, as I saw in your videos. But I still feel like Bronco's, a full step above that.
Oh yeah, mechanically you can't compete. Just looking at the overhangs, like one car is built for practicality and one is a much more purpose-built vehicle.
Yeah. And I think that's really it for this week. Anything else you want to add?
No, I'm not sure if our listeners noticed the sound quality or any background noise, but I am recording at the shop this week, so yeah, apologies in advance if things are a little bit different or lower
in advance. This is literally the end of the video.
Right. Apologies.
After the fact.
for that after the fact. It's easier to ask for forgiveness than permission.
Permission. Okay.
That's why I didn't start with the disclaimer.
I love it. Well, thank you everyone for watching. I hope you guys have a great time, and we'll catch you next week for some more automotive news.